So I'm wondering whether that kind of proliferation of so many outlets, so many interpretations, so much information, whether in fact the public is lost and in the end isn't having also the kind of impact that you'd expect information to have in terms of corrective in the thinking or decision making or interpretation of reality around them.
It's a really important question, and I think it raises the more complex issues. The relationship between information, identity, citizenship, and power. I think information, identity, citizenship, and power, that linear process, you know, in the Western democracies or any mature democracies, an individual citizen gets information, reasonably accurate information, analyzes it, makes a decision, looks around his or her world, finds out about taxation, immigrants, abortion, whatever the issue they're concerned about. They get a lot of information and then they say, okay, here's what I feel. And then they can go vote, they can take somebody to court, they can behave as citizens in a democratic society. They can use information to empower themselves and then act. In the Arab world, only the first part of that process works. They can get information. They can't do any of the other stuff. So the link between information, citizenship, identity, and power is completely broken. And the people behave very much, as you're saying, with conspiracy. I think it's very understandable. Most Arab citizens have lived in countries and societies for the last 3 generations, since the 1950s or 40s, where they feel, whether it's true or not, doesn't matter, they feel that they are not part of the decisions that define their lives and shape the future of their kids, that somebody else is in charge. Because they don't have democracy at home, they feel ravaged at the regional level, mostly by Israel. More recently, some people are concerned about Iran, or some people in even Iraq might complain about Turkey or something. There's other regional threats. And then the Western world. I mean, since Napoleon, you've had these armies coming from the West, and therefore the average citizen has experienced lifetimes of powerlessness in the important national decisions of their countries, and therefore they react like this. Anything that comes at us from the West, democracy promotion, economic development, human rights, whatever it may be, people are going to react saying, oh, this is a conspiracy. We got to be careful. We can't trust these. So it's a really bad situation. And this is one of the critical reasons, I believe, why it's so important to have better analysis and better information flows 2 ways between the Arab world and the Western world, predominantly the U.S., but Europe as well. But the U.S. is the main player now in this situation. And if you have better understanding, and this is where the media comes in again, why is it important to have accurate, clear, relatively equitable media coverage of the Arab world in the West, or of the West and the Arab world? It's important because if you really understand each other, you might then be able to influence the policy making in both societies to have fewer wars, fewer invasions, less chance of people breaking off and becoming terrorists. Better informed citizenries, a better quality media covering the other side, the other society, is likely to lead to better policies. The problem is we don't have a democratic system in the Arab world. The Arab world collectively is the only non-democratic region in the entire world. Collectively, the whole region is non-democratic and has been for 40, 50 years. And this is a real historical dilemma. I mean, this is another question, but it influences all these other things. Most Arab people, and I know this is a strong statement to make, but I make it out of love for the Arab world and being an Arab. Most Arab citizens, most Arab people do not use all their human faculties. They don't think 100% because they're not allowed in many cases. They're not creative. They don't debate. They don't engage in accountability of power. They don't use all the elements of a human being, their senses and their faculties and their power as human beings. And this creates these tensions, which makes it easier in many cases for for governments to keep the lid on. When people get fed up with this, many of them immigrate. So that's why you get so many of the best people in the Arab world who've left the Arab world. A very, very small number of them will go off and join bin Laden or some group in Hamburg or some group in New Jersey that's planning to blow up airplanes or something. But the number of Arab terrorists compared to all Arabs or Muslims compared to or Muslim terrorists compared to all Muslims is about exactly the same proportion as the number of Christian terrorists in the United States who blew up abortion clinics to the number of total Christians in the United States. So we shouldn't exaggerate the proportions of radical militants and terrorists compared to the total population. But this gets us back to the media coverage, where the media focuses on these groups so much and focuses on this anger and this frustration without probing deeper into society to find out what's going on. But ultimately, the impact, again, of all this is the fraying of the state. And so you get societies that are a lot more dynamic, but also polarized. But this is happening in the United States. I mean, you know, the Tea Party in the United States has its equivalents in Arab Islamic countries, Arab Asian countries, where people dissatisfied with what the central government is doing will challenge it, but also pull away from it and do their own thing. So we're still dealing essentially with a problem of Arab states that have never really been born properly by the consent of their own people. And that's why you have this massive reconfiguration of power and legitimacy in society with Islamic groups and tribal groups and private sector and civil society and all these and criminal groups and all these other people who are working to express themselves. And in a way, we're experiencing possibly, I said the birth of politics, but we may be seeing the first signs of self-determination in our societies. And not a formal self-determination where you have a referendum and you decide how to, you know, the shape of your country, the nature of your government, are you secular, are you religious, but an informal self-determination where we can see what people feel and what they think, and they're expressing themselves. How all that comes together and leads to political national transformation, we don't know.